President Joe Biden is receiving quite a bit of pushback and criticism following his decision to reinstitute what seems like a part of the Trump era immigration policy. And that has to do with the reopening of a tent facility to house up to 700 immigrant teenagers after they cross the US-Mexico border, unaccompanied by a parent, a sign of growing worries about how children are treated in government custody. And we're gonna have like the pushback from activists and politicians and all of that, but we wanna give you the facts about what's happening. So US Health and Human Services said on Monday that the first teens arrived at Carrizo Springs in Texas, which was converted 2 years ago into a holding facility under former President Donald Trump. Now, government officials say that the camp is needed because facilities for migrant children have had to cut capacity by nearly half because of the coronavirus pandemic. At the same time, the number of unaccompanied children that are crossing the border has been inching up, with January reporting the highest total, more than 5,700 apprehensions for that month in recent years. A spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services said that putting children in permanent shelters is preferable to the influx shelters like Carrizo, but nearly half of those beds are unusable during the pandemic. As of Sunday, there were about 7,000 children in HHS custody, over 90% capacity under pandemic era requirements. That facility that's been opened is expected to close when the pandemic ends, although, as with everything else with the pandemic, I mean, God only knows. Your guess is as good as mine when that's actually going to happen. So we have more information on this, but JR, what's your initial response?
First response is let's see where this is going, how this is going. Deep dive into how they're preparing and setting this up, how the children will be treated, and how soon they can get out. And what kind of at least close to permanent plan you can have, because every kid's situation is different. Some of these kids are unaccompanied, some aren't. Some end up somehow, for whatever maybe other reasons, getting separated from their parents. And if the policy from the Trump administration of separating children is still in existence, that's going to be a problem. So all that needs to be fleshed out, because we're still in this transition period, because that already got delayed in the first place, just with officials being put in place. That was part of the problem with the delay in calling the election, not the real election, all that stuff. There's a lot of transition things that didn't happen or happened late or are still currently happening. Cabinet members still getting filled. So whatever way all those may affect, because I'm not a government official, may affect the way this goes. Let's see. But in the meantime, this has to be done as humanely and as organized as possible.
Yeah, and so, well, I mean, I guess the immediate question that a lot of people are saying is that what's happening? And obviously we have to wait and we have to see. And we're gonna add all the, what we're gonna do is we're gonna reasonably launch into this and consider different elements. That's what we're going to do. But first I wanna give you had asked about some of the numbers about stay duration and stuff like that. So we do have a little bit of that. HHS said its goal is that children will remain at that facility for about 30 days, though they are coming from at least 2 weeks of quarantine at other Office of Refugee Resettlement facilities in the region. The average stay for children in custody across its facilities is currently 42 days. Back in 2020, migrant children spent an average of 102 days in federal government custody, which, and again, especially during a pandemic, is not where you want to be spending multiple months, because we know how the federal government has treated people in its various facilities during the pandemic. Now, again, part of the reason they're opening this up, they say, is that they have to keep capacity down at all of their other facilities, and that is to limit the spread of the pandemic. But that said, it's not just opening up tent facilities, it's reopening a particular tent facility that was only open under Trump for a little bit because of the public outcry about it. And so, like, it does feel like instantly, at the very least, and probably it isn't at the very least, a bad choice in terms of the optics to restart a facility that was one of the sites of the worst immigration-related excesses of the Trump administration. And the only reason I'm even saying at least is because I do still assume that at the very least, the motivations at play will be different. I don't think that the Biden administration will be changing a bunch of regulations to try to artificially increase the number of kids so that they can have them there, so they can send a strong signal to immigrants in other countries or potential immigrants in other countries that we are going to destroy you and your family if you come here. But that said, motivations are important, but they're not the only thing. That isn't everything. Who are the people that are gonna be staffing this? Are they going to suddenly treat these kids better than they did under Trump for some reason? Are the physical abuse and harassment and sexual assaults going to go away just because Joe Biden's president instead of Donald Trump? Like whatever trauma was caused by these facilities, why would that be different under Joe Biden if the facilities are the same, the organizations running them are the same, the employees at least hypothetically are the same? Like we can extend some goodwill to Joe Biden, but there's a lot of areas where I don't see any reason to assume that goodwill has anything to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's okay. And this is the way I think politicians should approach situations. And they
okay, seems like we might be having, JR looked like he was about to disagree with me, so we cut his connection, but we're gonna send a text to him, and if he's willing to agree with me, we'll bring him back on. No, I don't know, we had some sort of internet problem. It's actually been quite a while since we've had a problem that's actually killed a connection. But we're gonna try to bring him back in as soon as we can. And look, I see comments. So for instance, John Biden is not Trump. No, and I totally get that. And again, I'm not saying this is exactly the same as what Trump was doing. I've already acknowledged multiple ways that it is at least an intent difference. But I am also, and this is something that I've been talking about for some time, I'm worried about people not caring about stuff like this nearly as much because it's not Trump. Partially because Biden will be better in terms of policy, but also because of the assumption that he'll be better. And that assumption is probably going to be accurate in a lot of different ways, but he's still a politician. And it's not like Democratic administrations have been awesome in terms of immigration pre-Trump. Why would we assume that they're suddenly going to become awesome after Trump? What, because they're worried about activists? Maybe that would be awesome if that sort of pressure actually did cause them to change from the sorts of approaches to immigration we had under Barack Obama or under Bill Clinton. That's certainly good if that's the case. But if people are expecting that they can go back to brunch, then that's not gonna be the case anyway. So I'm just saying, we will keep watch and see. We're gonna see as we get, Ken Klippenstein is gonna get leaks from people working at this facility probably. We're gonna find out, are the kids staying for as short a period of time as they say? If the number of kids that are crossing the border, it looks like we have JR back. Welcome back, JR. If the number of kids crossing the border suddenly balloons, does that suddenly change the situation? And they had been saying it was gonna be 42 days, but oh God, now because of circumstances, it's gotta be 100. These are the sorts of things that we need to be on watch for. And I don't want us to just pop back into the story in 6 months and find out that they lost a bunch more kids and there's been a whole raft of sexual assaults and things like that. I want us to immediately send a signal to the Biden administration that we have no interest in going back to the policies of the Trump administration, that we're not cool with kids being traumatized and victimized and all of that. So that's why I think it's very important that we make clear what we think about this topic immediately to set the stage for the rest of the Biden term when it comes to immigration.
Where did you miss me? Where'd you lose me?
It was a bit ago. I don't know how long you thought you were talking. I apologize. But what were you gonna say?
Okay, no, because there's an approach that has to be had when it comes to these kinds of controversial moves like this, and it's controversial because of the previous administration. First of all, did we get that part?
I didn't hear that initially, but
okay. So this is, I think, okay. So politicians don't like to do this because it could look bad and because there's always some kind of opposition. It doesn't matter what party you're from. But the approach has to be an honest approach where you say, listen, we understand we're opening this facility that has all these bad records and the track record with it is so deplorable because of what was done previously. So therefore, we're doing A, B, C, and D now instead of the rest of that stuff that they were doing. And we're replacing this person. The problem lies here. Let's change that. Look at the facilities now versus the way they were. If you're doing these things, if you're actually changing the atmosphere and the situation that these kids are put in, and really anyone that's fleeing a horrible situation in another country. So as long as you approach it with hey, we're doing this. We understand this is a problem because of what was happening before, and this is how we're fixing those problems. And this is gonna be a temporary solution because we don't want it like that. Our policy is different. If you just do it quietly and wait for a couple of news reports that say, or not that this is what happened here, but it happens a lot. A new facility, a facility's reopened that was open under the Trump administration, now under the Biden administration. It leaves anyone and everyone to say, why are they doing that? That sounds like the same policy. You have to let people get out in front of it and let people know this could be a bad thing. We're doing it right. You have to install some kind of confidence from the people that are watching what you're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. And like, obviously, like, and we're getting comments back about this. Obviously, we have different expectations, hopes, fears, suspicions for instance, Joe Biden than we would for Donald Trump. We do for every politician. But in terms of just like trust, the belief that Biden would never do anything wrong, like, I don't know, this is sort of a remote quote, but a great man in a movie once said, "There's two people I trust, one's me and the other's not you." I don't trust Joe Biden. I have more hope for Joe Biden than I do for like Donald Trump. But like I was saying while you were gone, like look at Barack Obama on immigration. There were plenty of abuses. What was Hillary Clinton's record on immigration? Bill Clinton. Like these are not people that just, oh no, they're definitely gonna do the right thing. We can probably check out on this.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.